Welcome to Real Life Review's little video on how to change an inner tube. Now there's many reasons why you might want to change an inner tube. You might just decide it's been there for a while and it's getting old. You might be changing the tyres and therefore you're going to change the inner tube at the same time. Two jobs in one. You might want something with a bit more puncture resistance in there. Or conversely, you might want something that's going to give you a lower rolling resistance and a lower weight and try and get the marginal gain on your speed. But more than likely, you've got a puncture. So we're going to talk you through the steps, whether you're at the side of the road, in a workshop, in your front room or back garden, but we're going to show you how to change the inner tube on your bike. The first thing you're going to need to do to change the inner tube is actually remove the wheel. And to do this, you're going to need to release the quick release and undo it and open up the brakes. If it's the rear wheel you're removing, just remember to put the chain into the smaller cog and pull the derailleur to the rear, and that'll make taking the wheel, dropping out of the dropouts much easier. Once we've got the wheel off the bike, we're going to move to the opposite end of the wheel to the valve, and we're going to take our tyre lever and we're simply going to hook the tyre lever under the rim of the tyre and carefully prise it open. Now some tyre levers have a little groove in them with the aim of clipping them onto the spokes. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of this. I'm simply just going to hold the tyre lever there, and then I'm going to take my second tyre lever and I'm going to do exactly the same thing about 5 inches away. I'm going to tuck it in, hook over the rim, and there we have it. Now, in most cases, that's going to be enough. And all we need to do is just slide the tyre lever around a bit, and very quickly, the beading of the tyre will pop out over the wheel. And that's going to be plenty. And from that point then, I simply just pull the beading of the tyre so the tyre comes off the rim on that one side. First job done. Once again, we're going to move to the opposite side of the valve, and we're simply going to take hold carefully of the inner tube and pull it out. Now, what I'm going to do initially is I'm not going to remove the valve, because if I've got a puncture and I can identify where the hole in the inner tube is with that puncture, then I can look opposite where the hole is and I can just check the inside and make sure the thorn or whatever's caused the puncture isn't still there. That aside, I'm going to, with a puncture, going to check very carefully all the way around the inside of the tyre anyway, just in case there is something else in there that's going to cause another puncture. And what I don't want to be doing is putting a brand new inner tube in and creating another puncture straight away. Do take care though with your fingers that you're not going to cut yourself. Just do it very gently, very carefully, and feel all the way round. Okay, and once you've done that, if there's a lock ring on your valve, then you're going to need to undo the lock ring, spin him off carefully, and then simply remove the valve and the inner tube. Then we need our new inner tube, and first thing we must do is remove the dust cover and also the lock ring from the valve. Once we've got the inner tube ready, then we're going to need to add a little bit of air to it. This is going to give it some shape. It's going to help us when it comes to fitting the inner tube onto the wheel itself, and it's also going to help us prevent pinching with the bead of the tyre some of the inner tube and potentially getting another puncture straight away of some description. Now if you're carrying a mini pump, that's not a problem. If you're carrying CO2, don't worry, simply undo the prester. You can do this with your mouth, so it's nice and loose, little breath, and then do up the prester, and that's all we need. We've got enough in there that it's just holding a bit of shape and it's going to help us fit. Now, working in reverse, we start at the valve point and we insert the valve and carefully start seating the inner tube inside the tyre all the way round, making sure that we don't twist it. There we go, back to the valve. Keep coming this way now. And all the time making sure that the inner tube seats neatly and doesn't twist. Once we've got the inner tube on the rim itself, then we need to refit the bead of the tyre. Now, the really important bit here is that we don't pinch or trap any of the inner tube, and particularly at the end when we're going to pop the bead over the rim. A lot of people will advocate that, again, you start opposite the valve so that you finish up on the valve side where it's a lot harder to get a pinch and much easier to get the bead popped over and in. So all we need to do to start with is literally push the bead in and very carefully make sure that we're pushing against the inner tube and we're seating it nicely. And once you've got it started, it will just work its way round nice and easy. And we work our way round till we get back towards the valve and we've got the last bit of bead that needs to pop over. This is where we're going to need our tyre levers again, and it is a case of just taking the opposite of what we did before and simply picking the tyre up and popping it on very carefully, making sure that we don't pinch. And last one, with a bit of luck, maybe do this in one, maybe two, and again, there we go, and just make sure he's seated nice and good. Once the inner tube's in and the tyre's reseated, if you have a lock ring, you're going to want to put the lock ring back on, do him up, not too tight to start with, but what he's going to do is he's going to hold the valve in position so that when you attach your pump, you're not going to push the valve up and through and end up in some juggling situation where you're pushing the valve down at the same time as trying to pump up. When we attach the pump now, we're going to do so, and we're going to pump nice and gently to start with as we inflate, and we make sure that we haven't got any pinching of the tyre to the inner tube. So there we go, just putting the air in nice and gently. And the great thing about that, there's no little popping. Everything is seated nicely. I'm going to stop there. I'm just going to give a little check around and just make sure that everything is seated nicely on both sides. Lovely. And then I'm going to finish pumping him up to pressure, ready to go back on the bike. Once the tyre's up to pressure, you'll find that you're going to need to tighten your lock nut a little bit, as the tyre pressure in the inner tube will have pushed the valve through a bit more, and then refit your dust cover. And essentially, that is job done. My last little tip, and I do apologise if I'm teaching Granny to suck eggs here, but my last little tip is aimed at those of you who are doing your TTs or your triathlons. Very often you're going to have deep section wheels, and that means that you're going to have to accommodate for that with the length of the valve. So you need to be carrying either an inner tube that has an extended valve on it, or carrying valve extensions and the correct tool to use them. The last thing you want to be doing in a race is trying to fiddle around, undoing with your fingers or a multi-tool your extension that you've already got on, moving it from the punctured inner tube to the other inner tube, etc, etc, etc. And whilst we're on about speed, in that situation you're probably going to be using CO2 inflators. Well, just a little note, do bear in mind that the CO2 won't hold its pressure. Pure mixture of physics and chemistry, it's about particle and molecule size. The CO2 will permeate out of your inner tube, whereas air won't. So it'd be great for the rest of your event, but the next day you're going to need to replace that. Empty the tube, put some air in it, and you can get back out training. Now, a number of people will tell you that you can do all this without tyre levers. Well, yes you can, with some tyres and in good conditions. There are tyres that seat really tightly, and with the best skill in the world you're not going to get the tyre off without a tyre lever, and there are tyres that you might be able to do, and when you do it, start with the valve, put the wheel on the floor, valve at the top, push the tyre around down to the bottom, try and loosen it a little bit, and then pop the rim over. But you might find you can do that with a tyre in the summer, but when it's cold and the rubber's not quite so pliable, it's not going to happen. So yeah, give it a go. You might get lucky and you might find that you can do it quite easily. But pack those tyre levers. If you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel as well. You can do so by clicking on the round picture just up there. Alternatively, you could visit our website, and we have links to numerous cycle shops where you can buy lots of the goodies that we've shown on here and on other videos. And also, if you want to see a few more videos, well, we've got a couple up there and down there on some nice wheels. One pair is significantly more expensive than the others. Thank you.